Welcome back to the tailgate. I am your host and the voice of the tailgate, Michael Quattromani. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And if you haven't already, before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a like because it helps me out a lot. Also, check out my TikTok. I've been uploading on that very frequently. As of recently, I upload tons of football content, and also check out the most recent episode from the 4-1 podcast with the other one that I do, where we cover everything in the football world, and we do answer the question, should Cam Newton still be starting for the New England Patriots? All that and much more. But before I get into the outline, I have an announcement. I have a huge announcement. I'm very happy to announce that I have created the Tailgate Talk, which is a server group chat that you can join and discuss everything in the NFL. Everybody in the group chat will be the first people to get the news about the recent podcast episodes, along with hot takes, debates, fantasy football advice, and my own personal rankings. All of that and much more will be linked in the description of this podcast. So make sure to go check that out. Here we go. Here is the podcast of the day, brought to you by me. First off, I'm going to be covering, in my opinion, the most controversial news piece in the NFL right now. Why are the Pittsburgh Steelers so good? I think there's a lot of controversy whether, they're overrated or whether they're underrated or rated just fine. So I'm going to get into that. I'm going to give my MVP pick through the first 11 weeks of the season. And then I've got a new segment. I've got the quarterback hot seat. So I've got a list of about 8 or 9 quarterbacks, I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of quarterbacks this year that may not be having the starting job on the same team they have this year up for grabs. So we'll have to see what happens there. And then lastly, I usually fit it in the middle, but today's going to be the last. I'm going to do my fantasy football segment, which this week is going to be my 3 must starts and my 3 must sits. We are getting into that point where some of you are making playoff pushes, trying to get that first round bye, trying to just fight for a playoff spot. Luckily, I'm in the position where I'm trying to fight for a bye. I'm also trying to fight for a playoff spot in one of my other leagues. So trying to get both of those things done. We'll have to see what happens. But then again, before I continue, though, I really want to thank you guys for all the support. Really means a lot. But let's just get right into it. So why are the Steelers such a good football team? It is a very interesting question. I think it's very simple, though. They have just of why they've been so good this year. Mastering the art of consistency is an extremely hard goal to achieve. It's something that not every NFL team can do, and it's very rare. But the Steelers have done it. They haven't had a tough schedule by any means, so I'm not going to argue that they have. But when they have had tough matchups, say what you want about the Browns. I think they're way worse than what the record shows, but they're 9-3. Okay, they've beaten 9 teams in the league. That constitutes being a good football team. When you beat the Browns twice, you have to face the Ravens twice, and then you sweep both of them, and then you have to face the Titans too. That's kind of tough. That's a tough matchup. So, for them to be able to go into all those games and handle them pretty easily, that says a lot about them as a football team. Their defense and their offense both land within the top 6, with their defense landing at number 1. That's really good. And that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers are such a good football team. It's because they're extremely consistent. And they win. It sounds so stupid, but they win every game. Like, they do play down sometimes. That is like the only flaw that they really have. Is like the Cowboys game, the Giants game, the Jacksonville game. Like, some of these games, they only win by 1 score where, they're undefeated. You would expect them to win by more than 1 score, and they haven't, which has been a little bit concerning. But then, they'll go out and completely destroy the Browns. So I think it's one of those things where you got to either jump on or jump off. Are you with the Steelers or are you against them? Overrated or underrated wise. I personally think they're rated just fine. They're an underrated football. They're an undefeated football team. I mean, I don't understand how a football team that is undefeated can be overrated. That just doesn't make much sense to me. Like, the only flaw that you can point out is their offense. But they average the 6th most points per game. And the other one is obviously their schedule. Well, first of all, they can't control that. And second of all, whenever they've had a team that's over 500 or a tough matchup, they've won and pretty easily too. I mean, they were up in that Titans game by like 25 at one point. Granted, the Titans came back, but it was nowhere near enough to beat the Steelers. So I don't see what all of the, what talk about them being overrated is about, because they've handled all these teams relatively nicely. So I think the Steelers are a good football team, and I think the reason of their success has got to be their consistency. But second up on the day is going to be my MVP pick through week 11. So right now, as of December 3rd, it's already December, guys. That's nuts. Already December. I hope you're having a good December so far, making the most out of this hectic 2020 year. It's weird. 2020 is very hectic because, it's like a lot going on. But at the same time, there's nothing going on. If that makes any sense, like most of us are just sitting at home twiddling our thumbs all day. It's weird because it's also very hectic, like everything going outside right now, just a bunch of stuff. So, anyway, let's get right into it. My MVP pick through week 11 is going to be Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is my most valuable player because, and here's my reasoning, there is a difference between the best player in the NFL and the most valuable player in the NFL. I think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. I think he's better than Russell Wilson. But Patrick Mahomes is not more valuable to the Chiefs than Russell Wilson is to the Seahawks. Even though Russell Wilson is top 3 in almost every single passing statistic, let's put that to the side. Let's take all the stats out of it. Look at the personnel on each team. Russell Wilson, for the better part of the season, has had a bad O-line, virtually no run game because Chris Carson and Rashad Penny have been hurt, and an abysmal defense that ranks 26th in the league. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, has had a phenomenal offensive line, the fastest receiver in the league, the best tight end in the league, and a first-round running back, accompanied with a fantastic offensive line, a good defense that ranks 6th in the NFL. So in my opinion, if you take Patrick Mahomes out of Kansas City and you put in an average quarterback like Phillip Rivers, I think they go 10-6. But if you take Russell Wilson out of Seattle and you put in Phillip Rivers, I think you're looking at a 5-11, 6-10 football team. So that's why I think that Russell Wilson holds more value than Patrick Mahomes does. And the award is most valuable player, not best player in the league. No, it's most valuable player. And Russell Wilson is the more valuable player than Patrick Mahomes, and he's the most valuable player in the NFL. That's why Russell Wilson's my pick for MVP. So that was a pretty quick segment. But third up on the day is going to be my quarterback hot seat. This segment might take a little bit of a while. But these are all quarterbacks in the NFL that, as of right now, maybe aren't playing as well as some might have expected, or they might be on the way out. We'll have to see. So I'm going to name – hold on. Let me count it out. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 8 quarterbacks. And I'm going to go from a scale from 1 to 10 and give you a number, 10 being the seat's boiling hot. It's burning up. He's on his way out. And 1's like, there's not too much of a worry, but obviously there's something there. So first up is going to be Sam Darnold, quarterback for the New York Jets. So on the hot seat meter, I'm going to put Sam Darnold at a 4. Most of the selling point with Darnold is that he was the second pick of the draft. He's been in a broken offense, a broken team for most of his career so far, and he's been battling injuries here and there. That's all true. That's why I have him at a 4 and not like a 7 or 8, because if you're a guy like, I'm going to get into him in a second, but if you're a guy like Carson Wentz, who has a competent head coach, I know they've been injured, but he still has Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, even Alshon Jeffrey and Travis Fulgham have been great this year. You throw in both of those guys, Wentz has had people to throw the ball to, things to do. And even more importantly, we saw what Carson Wentz was, but I'll get into that in a second. Sam Darnold, though, really hasn't had much in his entire career. So that's kind of the selling point to where, he's still on a relatively long leash because Adam Gase sucks. Adam Gase even admitted today that he hasn't done a very good job at helping out Sam Darnold. So we'll have to see what happens with him. I personally don't see the Jets taking Trevor Lawrence. I see them trading the pick. In my opinion, I haven't done much research on it. I got to look into it. But as of right now, knowing what I know about the Jets and about the draft and about their quarterback situation, I don't think they're going to go out and get Trevor Lawrence. I think they're going to say to themselves, we could get like 3 or 4 first-round picks for this, and they're probably going to want to do that. Because if you really believe that Sam Darnold like potentially is like that it guy and he could be like, you know, your franchise quarterback, which even I think that's a possibility. I mean, he's flashed the pan a few times in recent history. So I think that's definitely a possibility. And if Jets fans and Jets, people on in the Jets organization, if they think that, then I don't think they're gonna go out for Trevor Lawrence, because then Sam Darnold's either gonna get traded for like a second round pick or he's just gonna ride the bench. So we'll have to see what happens. But right now, I'm gonna put Sam Darnold at around a 4. So next up is a guy that people really aren't talking about in the quarterback hot seat place, but I thought I'd put him in. It's gonna be Philip Rivers, obviously quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm gonna put Rivers at around a 6, and my reasoning is this: the Indianapolis Colts are probably a top 10 football team this year. I'm pretty sure they're 8-3 on the year, 8-3 or 7-4. They're one of those. They're very good. Their defense is like, it's definitely top 5 in the NFL. So they are. Oh wow, they're actually number 10. Because their last 3 they've been allowing 31 points per game. So, if you take out their last 3, they've been a phenomenal defense. They've just been a little rocky as of late, but every team goes through that. But we have such a talented defense and you have such a talented running back core. Throw in Marlon Mack. I know he's been out for the entire season, but throw in Marlon Mack. You have, Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins, Jonathan Taylor, obviously. I mean, you have good running backs in the backfield that complement each other well. I think Michael Pittman is a good rookie that, can develop into a solid wide receiver too. T.Y. Hilton's obviously past his prime, but he can still put up 400 to 500 yards on a season. They have a great tight end core. It's very underrated. You got Mo Alley Cox and Jack Doyle, and Trey Burton came back from injury. He's been solid. You have all these pieces accompanied by a great defense led by Darius Leonard. And then you look at your quarterback and Philip Rivers, and he's just like, as of late, he's been getting better, but he still hasn't been good. So I think if you're the Colts, you're looking at your roster and, you name all the players I just named. You're like, okay, we have a legitimate shot to be a contender. I think you move on from Philip Rivers and go into win now mode, because obviously you don't like Jacoby Brissett. Even though you signed him for a ton of money, he's riding the bench for a 39-year-old declining quarterback who's way past his prime. So it doesn't make much sense to me, but that just proves to me that A, they don't like Jacoby Brissett, and B, Philip Rivers obviously said something to them last season. I don't know what it was, but obviously it's something to them. So I think Philip Rivers is around a 6. We'll have to see what happens, though. Next up, talked about him about 2 minutes ago, Carson Wentz, quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I got like a 9.9999 out of 10. Like he is on the hot seat. Carson Wentz has his job in jeopardy. And this just dates back as early as Jalen Hurts being drafted. I mean, second or third round pick, I'm pretty sure Hurts was. But if you think about it, the worst thing that the Eagles can do is put in Jalen Hurts. I mean, Carson Wentz has gone through so much in his NFL career. He went from an MVP candidate, like people were legitimately saying Carson Wentz is an MVP candidate, to then like tearing his ACL or Achilles, having a huge surgery, huge injury, to then watching the backup quarterback lead the team and win the Super Bowl, to then coming back, seeing the backup go out and get a ton of money. You're the starter. And then you sign this huge deal. You're like, okay, I'm good. Gonna do well. And then they draft another quarterback. I mean, mentally, Carson Wentz must be broken. I mean, I couldn't imagine. So I don't know how Carson Wentz is going to be able to bounce back from all of the, things that he's gone through in his NFL career. I think that's why it's a 9.9. I think he's kind of feeling all that right now. And people thought, like myself, he's getting all his guys back. He's getting Goddard back. Miles Sanders is finally going to get healthy. Alshon Jeffrey's making his debut. Jalen Reagor is coming back. Hopefully Zach Ertz will be back pretty soon. All these guys are coming back. You think, okay, the offense is going to get back on track. They're going to start stringing some wins together. And if anything, they've gotten worse. And the person that's taken all the blame has been Carson Wentz. Now, earlier in the season, I said, guys, like, calm down. Carson Wentz is not that bad. Carson Wentz is a solid quarterback. Just calm, just like calm down a little bit. He's still good. And then, I'm watching the game and I'm like, he doesn't get the ball out of his hands. Like, granted, the offensive line is pretty bad, but like, even when he's given time, he just doesn't get the ball out of his hands. And when he does, it's a bad pass, or he's batted away, or he throws out of bounds, or something bad happens. Or he fumbles it, or he throws a pick. There is some blame to put on the offensive line, but I think there's more blame to put on Carson Wentz for just not being a good quarterback. Now, there are some people out there who are very drastic and radical and say, oh, he's a bottom 5 quarterback. No, Carson Wentz is not bottom 5. There's a reason why he's paid like top 10 or top 5 in the NFL. There's a reason for that. It's not bottom 5. He's probably like 13 or I'd say anywhere from like 13 to 20. Like, he's a middle of the pack quarterback. He has a lot of problems, but he has an extremely high ceiling if he can just get his confidence back and get to where he was in 2018. It's a lot to ask, but it's still a possibility. Next up on my list is going to be Kirk Cousins, another guy. Actually, his name was swirling last year mostly, but kind of died down. We'll see what happens over the offseason, though. Kirk Cousins, again, reflects kind of what I just said. I'm going to put him around a 3. Nothing too crazy. It's kind of like Phillip Rivers in the scenario where they're like, okay, we have Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph. We have a fantastic offense and, a solid defense with some really good talent, and we just can't get it done. And it seems like right now, after losing, I could be wrong, but I think they lost either the first 4 or first 5. It's kind of like too little, too late for the Vikings, and it sucks because I think a lot of the blame has been put on Kirk Cousins, especially for just not performing well under prime time, like under the lights. But yeah, I'm going to put Cousins at around a 3. It's pretty self-explanatory. Honestly, everything I just said really just shows an accurate depiction of how I feel about Cousins. So I'm going to put him around a 3. Next up, though, we're just over the hump. That's my first 4. Here's my last 4. I got Mitch Trubisky. If Carson Wentz is a 9.9, then Mitch Trubisky is about level 100. Mitch Trubisky, I mean, I don't even know if he belongs on this list because I'm pretty sure he's already gotten benched. He already got benched for Nick Foles. Granted, they paid him a lot of money, but he's already got benched. And yeah, he's the starter right now. Well, yeah, Foles got hurt, so he's the backup. They're going to put in the backup. Mitch Trubisky's the backup quarterback. Those people are like, oh, well, he belongs there. But, I mean, you actually say it. You're like, wow, Mitch Trubisky's a backup. And it just doesn't sound right. But that's where we are. Again, you got Allen Robinson. Even before Tariq Cohen went down, Trubisky wasn't any good. But, you got Cohen, you got Montgomery. An amazing defense. The defense gets, honestly, I think they get a little bit too much credit. Maybe by myself gives them too much credit. But right now, they rank 8th in the NFL in opposing points per game, which obviously is top 25%. That's pretty good. But yeah, I feel bad for Trubisky because I don't think that Matt Nagy was the best of coaches to train him and mold him into a starter quarterback. So I think Nagy definitely set him back a little bit. But there's obviously some blame that you can place on Mitch Trubisky. I'm not going to let him get off the hook that easily. So that's why Trubisky comes in at a 10 out of 10. Next up, Jared Goff. This is a very, very interesting situation with Jared Goff because when you're the LA Rams and you see, wow, we have Keenan Allen, you have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Darrell Henderson, Cam Akers, even Malcolm Brown, Tyler Higbee, even like you have such a good offense with a solid offensive line. You have a potent defense who's been playing well pretty much the entire season, coming up 4th in the NFL in opposing points per game. You have all that, and then you're still like they've played great. Okay, they're like 8-4 right now, or 7-5. They've been a great football team, but I still think there's something missing there. And that's why some of the blame may be placed on Jared Goff, especially given the fact that Sean McVay is widely regarded as one of the best coaches in the NFL. So if you're not going to place the blame on McVay and your defense is playing great and you have good weapons and you have a good offensive line, then the only person you can blame is Jared Goff. That's why for me, he comes in at a 7 out of 10 in quarterback hot seat, because if there's anybody to blame, it's going to be Goff. Last game against the Niners, he completely just blanked himself. He just did not play well at all. And It's those games where you're probably going to make the playoffs, but you're one of those teams where it's like, nothing's guaranteed. You can't drop those games to not only your division or not even like a 500 team, below 500 team, but a division rival. So you have to be able to win those games. And that's why there might be some, talks about potentially moving on from Jared Goff. We'll have to see though. Next up, Jimmy Garoppolo, quarterback for the 49ers. I'm going to say 8 out of 10. I know he went to the Super Bowl last year, but that's like saying that Ryan Tannehill went there last year. Again, Tannehill had a great regular season. He was probably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. I'm not even kidding. Ryan Tannehill was bowling out last season. But then things really cooled off in the offseason, not over the playoffs. And yeah, they have Derrick Henry. And they handed the ball off to him 35 times a game, and he carried it for like 200 yards a game. It makes sense why you're going to give it to Derrick Henry. But it's the same thing for the 49ers. They just handed it off to Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Matt Breida the entire time. And Jimmy G had one game where he had 80 passing yards. Pretty sure the NFC Championship had him having 80 passing yards. So he's looked really bad this year. He just hasn't looked like a good quarterback. I know he hasn't had the most weapons in the league, but he has arguably the best tight end in the NFL. I think George Kittle's second, but some might argue he's first. You have a great tight end. Brandon Ayuk emerged as a very good wide receiver. You have a fantastic run game, great defense. There's only so many excuses that can really go around for Jimmy Garoppolo, which is why I think he's coming in at an 8 out of 10 for me. But lastly, speaking of somebody who threw for 80 yards last week, Cam Newton is going to come in at an 8 out of 10 for me on the quarterback hot seat meter. Cam Newton deserves to be benched. I myself am a Patriots fan. I cannot stand having Cam Newton at quarterback. It is truly agonizing. It really is. I get so much anxiety when I watch Cam Newton try to throw the ball. There are so many stats about before the Cardinals game, how he was like the 4th ranked quarterback in QBR or whatever it was. Well, if you look at the efficiencies, he ranked bottom 5 in air yards, catchable pass rate, deep attempts, and he couldn't get the ball off. He took so many sacks and had so many tipped balls at the line of scrimmage. Forget at 6'6", or 6'5", you shouldn't have tipped balls at the line of scrimmage. Kyler Murray, who's like 5'9" or 5'10", doesn't have tipped balls at the line of scrimmage. So Cam Newton, in my opinion, deserves to be benched. I am so against Cam Newton. He comes in at 8 out of 10 for me. I don't think he should be a Patriot next year. I think you roll Jarrett Stidham. You kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You say to yourself, either A, this guy sucks, but now we know we can move on to the next quarterback, or you say B, this guy's awesome. He's our franchise guy, or you just say he's pretty solid. We'll start him for a while. And that's what you do with him. With Cam Newton have in your lineup, you can't do that with Jarrett Stidham. So personally, I think Cam Newton comes in out of an 8 out of 10. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to wrap up my quarterback hot seat segment. Right now, we're sitting at around the 22nd minute. If you're listening, or watching, because it's on YouTube too, I really, really appreciate you for sticking by. I really do. And by now, if you're sticking by the 22nd minute, you should really consider subscribing if you haven't already. I post weekly podcasts. I'm on the TikTok. I've got articles. I do a lot of stuff. Go out and give me a follow. Go follow the Tailgate Instagram too, at Tailgate Podcast. Really good. So, my fantasy segment. Here we go. My 3 must-starts of the week. Coming in at number 1 is going to be Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is my number 1 start of the week. I know it's been a tough going. For those of you that have Miles Sanders, along with myself, it's been a tough going over these last few weeks. But his matchup against Green Bay is remarkable. They rank 30th in the NFL, bottom 3. It's a great week for him to get back on track and help you into the playoffs. I know they might find themselves down in this game, but after watching these Eagles games, even when they find themselves down like they did the Seahawks, like by 2 or 3 scores, they still don't abandon the run game, which is a very promising thing for Miles Sanders owners. And I see finding themselves down in this game against Green Bay too. But don't worry, I still think Miles Sanders is good for anywhere from 14 to even 25 points this week. He'll be a good RB2 flex play. Second start of the week, David Montgomery. I said it months ago. Go out and trade for David Montgomery because he has a beautiful playoff schedule. And I hope you did, because last week he put up 27, and he has another beautiful matchup against Detroit this week, who ranks dead last against running backs. As long as Montgomery is facing a bottom 10 defense, which he's going to do for 3 out of his last 4 matchups, he is always going to be a must start. You got to go out and start David Montgomery because he's getting a lot of carries. He broke out a run last week for about 50 yards, went over 100, had a receiving touchdown, everything you could ask for in an RB2, and that's what David Montgomery is. So go out and go out, trade for him, do whatever you got to do, but start him this week. Next up, though, a guy that has been extremely weird, very hard to gauge, Michael Thomas. Had a tough week last week, but that was with an extremely run-heavy game plan against the Broncos. If you watch that game, obviously going into that game knowing that the Broncos didn't have a starting quarterback on their roster, Sean Payton and company definitely said to themselves, okay, this is going to be a run-heavy game, and we saw that because I'm pretty sure Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara combined for almost 35 carries. So they were the focal point of the offense. Taysom Hill didn't really throw the ball a whole lot, and when he did, it did go Michael Thomas's way. I think he had 10 or 11 targets. He only just reeled in 4 of the catches. But he's going to have a big game this week, especially against Atlanta, who is dead last against receivers. I expect the Saints to be in a shootout with Atlanta, and the passing game will be more prevalent, favoring Michael Thomas. So I think Thomas, definitely a start for this week. He's a wide receiver 1. Some people might be demoting him to wide receiver 2 or possibly a flex in like 8-person leagues. I still think Michael Thomas is a wide receiver 1. You can't deny the talent. He's still getting opportunity. I think he's logged 10-plus target games in all 3 of his games so far. You got to go out and start him. Don't be fazed by his 9-point game and the 4-point game, when he came back, because remember, that was his first week back. They weren't leaning on him a ton, and Drew Brees did throw the ball to like 13 or 15 different receivers that game. So they were obviously trying to move the ball around, and Michael Thomas wasn't the focal point that game, but he has been as of recent. And might say, oh, Michael Thomas' numbers have been down. That must mean Alvin Kamara's has too. Well, no, Kamara's have been almost even worse than Michael Thomas's. He's not getting the ball nearly as much as he was with Brees. But Michael Thomas is still getting the ball with Taysom Hill. He's still getting the opportunity. He's still a must start. But my 3 must-sits for the week to wrap up the final segment of the podcast. Again, hope you're really enjoying it. My first sit of the week is going to be Antonio Gibson. I know he had a fantastic game last week on Thanksgiving, but this game against Pittsburgh is daunting. It's a tough matchup. I'm betting that Pittsburgh is going to focus on shutting down Gibson in this game and make Alex Smith throw the ball to other players if they find themselves behind, which you'd have to assume Pittsburgh versus Washington. Pittsburgh's probably going to win by a substantial amount. Antonio Gibson's going to be written out of the game script, and he's like the only relevant player other than Terry McLaurin on that offense for Pittsburgh to be able to shut down. Pittsburgh has good linebackers. You'd assume that Antonio Gibson's probably going to get focused on pretty well. So I don't think Gibson's in for a big game. He's a low-end flex play for me. We'll have to see, though. My second set of the week, Todd Gurley. Please don't start Gurley. I could see him getting less than 5 points this week. I really could, unless he gets a touchdown. I really haven't been a big fan of Gurley since week 6. In this matchup against the Saints is going to be tough. Last time Gurley faced off against the Saints, he had 3 points. 3.6. He had 36 rushing yards, and that was it. Even if Gurley doesn't play and Brian Hill gets the start, I'm still saying that you should probably find a better option like Wayne Gallman, who has a touchdown in every game he's played, doesn't have a game less than 14 since he got the start, and he's been playing absolutely amazing with a fantastic matchup this week. My last sit of the week is a guy who I've refused to say sit because of his name and because of his, name value, but it's going to be Zeke Elliott. I'm finally there. I'm finally to the point where I'm saying sit. I'm saying to sit Zeke Elliott for the rest of the season, starting this week against Baltimore. It pains me to say this, but he just doesn't look good running the football. He fumbled the ball 6 times in his last 11 games. And Tony Pollard, honestly, looks like the better running back. It's just the facts. With a tough matchup against Baltimore this week, I think Zeke should be a borderline flex play in 12-person leagues, but he should be benched in all others, especially PPR. Just bench him. He's not worth it. His floor is just too low. There's too much uncertainty about that offense, too much uncertainty about his volume, too much uncertainty about his fumbling issues. That's what it comes down to for me. And I'm going to say that Zeke Elliott is my number one sit of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up yet another podcast. I really appreciate you for sticking all the way till the end. If you don't already, make sure to subscribe. Whatever it is you do on Spotify and Apple Music, I'm not even sure, but go do all that stuff to make sure that you listen to all my other podcasts. And before I exit, please make sure to follow the Instagram at Tailgate Podcast. I'm trying to post a lot more on it. My takes, rankings, all these good stuff to help you win your fantasy football leagues and help you enhance your football knowledge. So with that being said, I really appreciate you guys for sticking around, and I will catch you guys next time. Thank you.